Hangout or recording the Hangout?
Let's go. Hi. All right. So we're going. People are maybe joining live. I don't know, but they're streaming. For those of you who are new, it's kind of funny on the Hangouts. We first announced doing this meeting at the MacAdmin conference in Sweden that we were just talking about. So we still get a ton of people watching live from Sweden, which I think is a funny sort of thing. But anyway, so new people. Hi, how'd you hear about this meeting? I'm glad that you did.
Well, a friend had mentioned the website meetup.com, and I just put the tag.
Cool.
And being that I'm in New York, you guys showed up.
So what do you do?
Actually, just started recently at a new job as a senior desktop engineer, supporting all Macs basically.
Cool.
So,
All Macs. How many, if you can name?
It's a company of like 300 to 400 employees, but there might be more than that.
Yeah. Well, that's a good number. That's past the point you can walk around and visit every Mac and do stuff. So you have.
Yeah, well, they have also two different offices, and I'm the first tech in this New York office, which is a smaller of the two. But yeah, it's taking a little bit used to it.
Did you have experiences with OS 10 and Macs before?
Oh yeah. I've been doing Mac support for since 2010.
So do you have something in place for management right now?
At this company, yeah, they have Jamf Casper Suite, which is neat, but the way it's kind of set up is a little all over the place.
Okay. Well, that's a popular choice.
Is it a Chicago-based company? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, I know which job you took. I think I may have heard about the posting through the grapevine.
Interesting.
It's a small community.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I got this job, but another position opened up that was Mac-based, so.
Oh, welcome. So,
Nice.
We're here for your questions about best practices and things like that. What brings you to this?
I was watching some of the videos from this June at Penn State. And then a couple of the videos in there offered best practices. One was find this group. I was like, really? In New York City? That's kind of cool.
Cool. Who was that? Do you know what video that was? Who was the speaker? Just out of curiosity. This was one of the first years I didn't.
I actually remember the subject was script your way out of a job, I think was the title.
Who was that?
That's
Graham?
Graham?
Graham Gilbert.
Right.
Oh, wait. Now I recognize you. And your voice in the background of some of those videos.
Yeah, I co-opted his presentation a bit.
Very good. Well, that's a good conference. I'm looking forward to making it next year, because this was one of the first years I couldn't make it. I was traveling. They moved it.
I didn't make it.
Yeah, but videos. Yeah. That's good.
The dates too, right? Because I think next year it's like July. This year was.
This year was July.
July 11th.
End of June. July 11th. That's it. I was just getting back.
Yes, because that was my wedding anniversary, so I wasn't going to the conference.
You weren't making the conference either.
Yeah. I work for a company that's based out of Florida and New York City. We have about 500 Macs, including home-based users. We have a Windows backend.
Okay.
With a administration staff that's hostile Windows users.
Interesting.
I was hired by someone else who's no longer working there because they were busy moving all their PCs to Mac. The boss, the president, loved the look of an iMac and envisioned all the new offices with 27-inch iMacs.
Well, that's
I couldn't complain.
As we were talking about just before we started on the Hangout, I used to do a lot of work with recording studios and video companies, and the look was super important to them because they decked out their place to look really impressive to clients walking in. So
it's a publishing company, so they're all artists.
Super important. But I have to admit, I had to install Windows on a laptop for the first time in a long time, and it's just like I want to throw the thing through a window. So like no joke, it's like
which OS?
7.
Yeah, except myself, every other IT person has Windows running on a Mac.
In a VM or something.
Yeah, or just because they just don't want to deal with it.
Really?
They don't want to deal with OS 10?
Yeah, they don't like Macs.
Interesting. So, what do you have in place for management of all these?
I have Play Studio, I have Monkey, or trying to get those up and running smoothly. Today, and this past week, I've been moving from a one golden master image to try to move it to a thin image layout.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going through the growing pains of that. I'm not the best scripter in the world, so I'm busy going through all the videos from Penn State to try to get a handle on a little more Python so I can recognize stuff and some XML to try to, so if I notice something broken or need to edit something, I know what's going on.
Right.
So that's what I'm in the middle of.
Good. Well, welcome. Yeah, a lot of Monkey support around here. So what did I say we're going to talk about today? I know I mentioned 4K monitors, and that was just
Yosemite iOS 8 launched.
Yeah, well, the 4K monitors thing was just off the top of my head because I hear about people more often buying 4K monitors, and I think like people are just so desperate for Apple to release a Retina monitor.
They may not have much longer to wait.
You may right. So my thinking is that they have to announce something this Thursday, like especially if they do end up announcing Retina iMacs, they have to have an external display.
Thunderbolt display.
If you've installed Yosemite on a non-Retina machine and a Retina machine, it looks so dramatically different and so much better on Retina that like a Mac Pro, the trash can Mac Pro, where you only have a choice of an external monitor, it's like it's a crime to plug this thing into a non-Retina display. So I feel like they have to do something for that situation. You're right. I'd like to see that. That might be just holding out hope. But
the rumors are that it won't be 4K either. It'll be 5K.
Well, like,
at least on the iMacs, and you would think that the resolution would match on the a Thunderbolt display, but it looks like it'll be a perfect doubling of the existing resolution on those 27-inch displays to Retina-ize them.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess Retina depends on the device, right? I'm not the most informed person.
Well, they talk about it,
but like Retina depends on the device and like how far you hold it from your face. So a Retina display, yeah, it might be 5K. I don't think anything stops it from being that.
Yeah, what is it? 2560 by 1440, I think is the resolution on the 27-inch iMac. So if you double that, you get 5120 by 1880, or by 2880 rather. Yeah, so you get something greater than the 3840 by 2160 of a 4K display. So I don't know if Apple will, but it is by the same sense that 3840 is 4K, you would count 5120 as 5K. And it just sort of makes sense if you're going to design.
They've also spit pixels and then rezzed down recently with certain things.
Yeah.
So
this in particular.
But like then you think about the board and the lanes, the PCI Express lanes on the board that you end up with enough bandwidth that you can push the video, and they're like laptops inside of a desktop shell with an LCD on front. Like I don't think that many laptops.
They're not as laptop component as they used to be.
But you need enough leftover.
The iMacs.
Oh, the iMacs. Yeah.
You need enough leftover for the Thunderbolt lanes. If they're going to go Thunderbolt 2 this gen, they would need.
I'm assuming there's going to be a custom main logic board involved that has more.
There always are, but they usually don't care as much about the Macs, nor the number one like entry-ish level versus the Pro desktop machine. Like that has to be lower cost for the lower price, so they can have the higher margin.
Well, but iMacs are incredibly expensive. Like, let's be honest.
Relatively to
the PC marketplace.
Compute, right?
So,
as a whole, but it's still like I just don't know if 5K would be in the next couple of years, because you don't see a lot of 5K monitors. you see this real weird rebranding of Ultra HD, right?
Right.
So that makes everything nice and fuzzy, so you can get
in a
close
bunch
enough.
of monitors, right? And you were closer to this than I was. That like, oh, we're going to test some 4K monitors, but the resolution wasn't 4,000 pixels.
Well, it's almost 4,000.
Right, but to me, that's not 4K. Right? You need at least 4,000 pixels if you're gonna pretend that it's 4K.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's a 4K that the film studios and motion picture industry.
And it's a difference in the aspect
Right,
ratio.
and the
So
there's eight 4K standards.
Go.
Well, I can't name
Go.
them, but there's Ultra HD, there's Ultra HD Wide, there's Cinema
Right.
4K. There's 8 different standards, and they're all slightly different. I don't know that.
This is the parlor tricks that we expect from you. Come
on your
on.
computer though?
What?
Can't just Google that.
Yeah.
yeah, isn't there some kind of a company that makes an engine
It's like
for
when you were in
finding the
school,
answer to
I'll
these
bing
things?
it.
Teacher, why don't need to do this math? I have calculator. So.
Ask Jeeves, why does he suck? Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
Windows
3840 by 2160 became Ultra HD because it is a perfect doubling of the 1920 by 1080 of the
But here's my
1080p.
question. We can talk
Standard.
about numbers all day. Does 4K look any better?
Yes.
Well,
Do you think it looks better? But do you think it looks as good as a Retina display?
At what viewing distance?
I think it does.
And at what size? But you talking about as a television set, or are you talking about as a computer
monitor,
display?
As a computer display.
Depends on the
That's what
quality.
we care about.
It depends on the quality of the monitor. Some of the better Dells that I've seen actually do look about as good. Not quite as rich because they don't have that glossy cover that the Retina MacBook Pros do. Right, they're more of a matte finish, so you don't get the same depth of
I
black.
want the matte finish.
I know. Me too. Depends on how much light you have behind you, I guess. But yeah, they look incredibly better than looking at a 27-inch iMac or the 27-inch Thunderbolt display that Apple currently ships.
A layperson, like not someone who's a designer or someone who's like someone who would be in tune with what would make a better display better. Do you think that the average mom and pop will notice a difference?
Having
Depends
used
on
the
how old
4K
mom and
display
pop are.
for a little while, I mean, it's like switching to Retina. It's just easier on your eyes. Like it lowers the fatigue of using the machine. I mean, I found like it's very hard to use a 4K display and another display because the OS is not built around that idea. But if you're on an all 4K display and you can set all the settings the way that like I'm very nearsighted and I need reading glasses, so like I can set it so that's big enough for me to read comfortably. The letters are the same size. I'm not getting more real estate, but it's just really easy on the eyes.
Especially when you're talking about some of the thinner fonts, the Helvetica Neue Lights that Apple is moving to. When you talk about those real thin fonts and the amount of anti-aliasing that has to happen at 107 ppi or whatever a lot of these displays are, it's a huge difference. This is like if you ever go back to an old iPad, an iPad 1 or iPad 2 after having used one of the Retina ones, or an iPhone 3 after having used a 4 later, it looks incredibly pixelated. And
how's this affecting the publishing industry? Do you have people like really anxious for something a little bit?
So
higher
most of the companies that I work in don't really pay attention to that.
Okay.
And it's by money is cost. I have one actual Mac Pro, new one with Thunderbolt displays that does broadcast video editing. Everyone else is on just a new 27-inch.
But it seems like it would be more important for type than video. For me, it just seems like people who are like looking at type all day, zooming in on type.
I just got the biggest editing group off this past winter off 24-inch iMacs.
Okay.
And they were running CS2. So finally, I have at least on CS 5.5 and new 27 inches.
wow.
So
CS2.
we had we had two computers that had every version of CS on it. So when it went from one department to another, I'd go to this computer and then get
cross-translate. Oh my god.
Oh, it was horrible.
Every golden master you get is forgiven.
Wow.
Oh my lord.
Finally, it's
terrible.
all the same. But I mean, and there's probably, I think there's probably more push down in our Florida office, which I don't get too much contact with the directness of,
Yeah.
because I've seen a lot of upgrades and things are moving faster there.
Is that
where
headquarters or is
Yeah.
that the place? Okay, that's the place with the
So
money.
even though I have more users and
Yeah.
more magazines, but
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, I find that like horsepower difference wise, we have a studio that is almost entirely filled with designers. Some 3D, mostly 2D. You know, InDesign is the most frequently used app in our office. But we do some video editing, After Effects, Premiere, all that kind of stuff. And I've got everybody on 27-inch iMacs. I might get a couple of Mac Pros in, but as long as they have some kind of an SSD in them and they're quad-core processors, I find that they can handle all of that very, very well.
we don't have SSDs, but everything's done off of a server. So it's all server-based.
They're all on gigabit connections
Yeah.
back to the server. So everything's limited to 100 megabytes a second anyway. Or
The biggest thing is we've been upgrading our servers too, and like without consulting, like I was hired on that guy. I never get consulted for stuff like that. So one morning I get an email saying everyone has to move to Mavericks because the SMB is better, and we need it before we install all these servers. And I'm like, what?
Did they even test that? Or they just
No.
saying,
It broke so much that I had to go around and fix, and then their deployment strategy was horrible. I mean, they're just, I know, there's no BPP, volume purchase licensing, or anything set up like that. It's just crazy. So I'm busy slowly working that in.
I'm just curious because you had mentioned it and it might be taking us off track, but what was the transition like for your end users going from CS2 to CS 5.5?
They were waiting. They hated it. We actually had a back-end CMS called Woodwing that they didn't want to spend the money to upgrade. So we were still running the old version, hence why they couldn't upgrade the OS or anything. And we get to a point where the computers are actually breaking. And for some reason, because we had no real licenses, we had no way of putting that on a Mac again. If the machine died, it was gone.
Shoot it right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were waiting for that, and they love it. I mean, I gave them external monitors. I convinced them to put at least 16 gigs of RAM, just because I know they probably won't get upgraded for a very long time.
Right.
So, so 4K monitors, I find like people buying here and there. Does anyone think that'll change if Apple announces an Apple Retina display?
Especially in an
The
iMac.
price just has to come down. I mean, I think
It's
that's
going to come down eventually.
Yeah.
Just like
And if
I mean,
Apple-
right now it's just everyone's an early adopter, right?
Yeah.
But it's just going to go through that phase like all other technology.
And if Apple buys 20 million pieces of glass from Samsung, the price will drop. And that would be great for everybody.
Just as long as the same thing doesn't happen that happened to 3D TVs.
Well, that was always a game.
Well, yeah, that was always a game.
Well, that's the question. Is 4K a gimmick? I don't think it is. I think
No.
it actually is good
it's
value.
Certainly not in a computer
720p,
monitor.
Right, 1080p, and it just keeps getting better. It's always going to get better. It's just.
Well, there are limits though.
Progression.
Your eyes only have so many pixels in them in the first place, you know, to make that analogy, and it's certainly only at the center of your vision. But there are some very good charts that'll show you.
That's just so weird to talk about.
Way to
I just have
express
so
it.
many pixels. I would have said points.
Yeah.
Because
I found myself in a phone conversation just a couple of nights ago describing Michelangelo as the Hitler of the art world, in that it was the quintessential example you would use for like the archetype
the Godwin's
of
law of discussion
exactly
regarding
artists. I had just gotten back from Italy and talking about he's Michelangelo for a reason, you know. He's anyway. I tend to use strange analogies, but
Hendrix is here. Everybody else is like
but as far as what your eye can resolve, you know, the number of rods and cones are only receptive to so much. And so a display that size, if you want it to be 4K and for you to be able to tell the difference between a 55-inch monitor, let's say, being 1080p resolution versus being 4K resolution, you have to be prepared to sit within 5 feet of it.
Right.
So once OLED or whatever enables you to make these larger displays that are even thinner and even lighter, so you can have a 98-inch TV that is just sort of flat hung from your wall and only weighs 40 pounds, and have something that's more like a movie theater experience, right? But that's what the movie theaters are showing things at. It's 4K, all the digital projection.
Yeah.
I doubt you'll see it go much higher than that. That you'd be hard. There's a lot of people saying 4K is totally unnecessary.
Well,
I don't think you'll find much buy-in for 8K.
You're already talking about 8K, yeah?
Yeah, they'll do it because they can.
Yeah.
Well, but-
the
processors get faster.
If a 30-inch 4K display becomes a standard, they will sell us 45-inch 8K displays.
For computers, yes, I could see
right.
that. I could see that.
So, shifting track, OS 8 postmortem. For anyone who is relying business-wise on their iOS device, did you encourage people to install iOS 8?
Hold them back.
You encourage them to hold back.
No, we didn't. I mean, you can't. You can't encourage them or you hold them
You
back.
can encourage them. I'm not saying you can stop them.
Yeah.
Well, if you have your corporate devices on an MDM with profiles, is there no way to block?
No way.
Wow.
Period.
That's an Apple thing.
That's awful.
I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense, right? Why would Apple want to stop?
Right. Makes
The
sense.
adoption
that's what
rate
they
of
tote.
their
Because
They
you want
told
to be
we
able
have
to
more
make phone
data
calls.
adoption rate.
than anyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you want it to not break things. You want to test compatibility with.
But if you
your
look at it
apps.
from Apple's perspective, right, it's like, well, we're releasing this and we know it works. Obviously, what's
But
happening
you can push
out
a
there.
profile on the Mac to stop App Store updates.
Yep.
Including
But it's
getting advertised to the next.
Right, but it's a
OS.
giant hammer.
It's a giant hammer. It
You're
doesn't just.
stopping App Store updates. You're not stopping OS adoption.
Right.
You're stopping dead App Store.
Right, but if you, as a company, decide you can't do that upgrade for some reason, it's,
It
it's a hammer
definitely
you
depends
have
on what you're using it for. I mean, we have email on it, and that's all
Right.
the
Right.
phones are used.
Right.
We actually, though, use iPads for sales to do presentations. That's more locked down.
Yes.
We use actually Meraki for that,
Right.
and we pretty much lock that down. They can't.
And when you
do
say
almost anything.
lockdown, the end user can't upgrade the OS.
Can't.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
My wife works for one of the top 5 banks in the world, and they all they do BYOD for most of their phones, not for computers.
Yeah.
And they have the Good app installed, which is a way of sort of sequestering off their email and contacts and all that, so that it can't be passed out to the rest of the phone. And their IT department basically sent out a memo to everybody there saying, "Hey, we know iOS 8 is out, but if you could just hold off updating for a couple of weeks."
Yeah.
And that's effectively the only way they can manage it. I don't know how many people pay
So yeah,
attention
there's
to
encouragement from your IT department, right? Saying, please
Hold on.
please don't, because there will probably be bugs and crap.
Well, you have tech-savvy people, and then you have people who you don't have to worry about because they
They're not gonna
don't
do
know
it.
how to update. They'll come to you anyway, even though it's just press a button.
Yeah.
The big thing that happened this time is because you needed so many gigs. There were a lot of people that were holding off just because they
That was
didn't know
pretty-
how to
Yeah.
upgrade.
They didn't know how to do it through iTunes, and they just
Well,
They'd
a lot of
forgotten,
people-
yeah.
Or a lot of people don't hook up to it in the
Right.
corporate
Right.
environment.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
people don't
You
hook up to it.
never. Well, they tried to wean you off of that, not needing it. So the first iPhone and the first iPad, it was an awful out-of-box experience.
Yeah.
Oh wow, check out this cool thing. Hook up to iTunes, right? Like, no, I want to use it. What are you talking about? Hook, and then there was this process. That was an awful out-of-the-box experience. So Apple worked really hard to.
It was revolutionary.
I worked for
Jeff
Apple
Ward.
during
only
that.
at
And
times.
iOS 5
It
was
was
the
awful
first
for
time they
us,
were
too.
able to do it, right?
Yeah,
That
right.
out of the box.
Out of the box.
iPhone 4 was the first iPhone that you could take out of the box and
Yeah.
activate without connecting to iTunes.
Right.
Having been in the trenches. for
Yes.
that particular box.
So.
Yeah.
A lot better than.
And that's symbolically the point at which Apple decided they didn't need the Mac business anymore.
Yeah. Well,
Like when the iPhone shipped, it was
Yeah.
the point was we're going to sell these phones, and people are going to have Macs to go with them. And then a little bit like, actually, you know what? The phones are worth a lot more money.
Oh, come on. You could have said that about the iPod,
And the iPod too.
when it lost the FireWire port. Like,
No,
they
so they
moved
released iTunes for Windows. Yeah, that was.
But their phone is the route into increasing their market share. I mean, their market share has been steadily going up since then.
Totally. So anyway, I mean, I was just curious if people had.
We've been riding along with the betas consistently, all of us,
Right, but
making sure.
if you were.
We don't tell them anything.
Right,
And they
you don't tell regular
and they don't
users,
come to us either.
here's 8.1 and go install it. Of course, you do that as someone with a developer account.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a lot better so far, yeah.
Well,
8.1.
Do you do it on your actual phone or like a test phone or test device?
we have
actual
our standard issue makes it more difficult for us to use that loophole. If you need 5 gigs free on your device to upgrade, we give everybody 64 gigs. So they don't have that limitation, right? They're not loading that much stuff on their work iOS device. But we have work iOS devices. We have a small stock, otherwise he has to run to the gosh darn Apple Store at 5 to 15.
You have a day phone and an iPhone?
He does.
You have a day phone.
I refuse. At this point in my life.
So yeah, so you're doing all the updates on your primary device and just rolling with it.
So that we make sure we get the full experience of whatever we're going to be cut by.
Yeah.
But luckily there isn't a lot drastically for the workflow that our customers needed. Like Citrix works, and Citrix still works. And Citrix still works, so
it does.
Life is relatively easy.
You're lucky.
It's our front end that's fine, right?
Right. Okay. Cool.
Our back end is the limitation to worry about what the front end's functionality might be.
So Apple event this Thursday. What's getting announced? What are we in for?
iPads, obviously.
4K displays in iMacs. Potentially
Mac Mini.
iPads.
Waiting for that.
Yeah, Mac
iPads
Mini,
with
Touch ID.
Touch ID.
supposedly.
And supposedly the screen that is better for viewing angles and stuff that they introduced with this.
Yeah.
With the pluses and the sixes. But it seems like humdrum that it's on a Thursday in the first place.
I'm not sure why. They always do it on a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday.
So I'm not sure why
So I
they
think it's
moved it.
kind of like shoveled. I think it's kind of like we want you to care about the iPhones that are always what you should care about, and it's a little bit of a transition, so why don't we even pad down our
So
iPad
you named
business?
everything except the one thing I care about, which is Yosemite.
Oh, that'll be announced too. Ship date probably of the next day, or even that same day.
Yeah, I've heard that they always do it like
For Yosemite.
the
Within the other day of or following day?
yeah, of the sales.
I was
My
expecting
feeling is
to follow.
we're going to get a date for Yosemite, but it's not going to be go download it now. God, I hope it's not. Yeah. Because it's still really rough.
Even GM3 you think is really rough?
Yes.
Would you like to see the data?
Yeah, I'm sure you're not wrong.
Or the radar
There's still
numbers.
a lot of polish going into it. Like each of the GMs have been like little polishing. Like if anyone's running in dark mode, which dark mode is awesome, right?
Yep.
Why haven't they done this for years and years? But there are so many things like menus. You find like these weird outlines in dark mode. There's a lot
In
of,
third-party apps or in?
even in Apple apps.
Okay.
There are a bunch of artifacts and goofy things around.
The third-party apps are not going to draw the menus.
So are you saying
It's
it's
gonna
a
be the
lot of
system
like,
kit.
things that are aesthetically just not right, or
There are some of those. I have 2 experiences with Yosemite. One is on my home machine, which is total stock, nothing fancy, and that's been okay. That's been pretty good. But then when you're trying to do these corporate things, like we try to do here, 802.1x authentication, that's totally falling apart. Having a network proxy totally falls apart. I'm trying to think of some of the things that like are obvious. Like those are sanctioned things to do, right? We're not doing some like, we wrote this thing and it's doing something Apple doesn't expect. These are like sanctioned things.
So it also broke that too.
Yeah, it also broke those things. But so yeah, I've just been finding Yosemite kind of rough. and speaking of things on Twitter, that was one of the impetuses for like, Apple just, here's GM1, here's GM2, here's GM3, and you have no idea what's changed or why, which is really frustrating because when there's a change, you don't know if it's intentional, is it a bug?
They're pulling it back in because they let it out the bag too soon, and they're going to relaunch it at some point.
Right.
So do I need to actually worry about this as a workaround or just working
like,
it into a testing matrix?
They've rewritten LaunchD.
Yeah.
And through the developer previews, we're like, oh, this is missing, and this is missing, and then it just shows up later on. Like,
right.
Oh, okay. Did they
temporarily deprecate or permanently deprecate?
Right, or it's coming back. So.
Yeah, the early man pages on that were great. It's like, you guys never used this properly anyway. It's like, oh, thanks. Yeah. It was a really great attitude in the man pages for that.
Yeah, I do like a lot of the changes in LaunchD, though.
How drastic are we talking here?
I think everything's fixed now. I don't think we have anything that's like, nothing disappeared that we were relying on. Like, it all came back, or they fixed it, or got it going. But there's no more per user LaunchD, which is fantastic.
So it's just system-wide.
So
well, you used to get everything owned by these separate LaunchD per user.
You still have LaunchD
processes.
launching stuff.
Oh yeah. All that stuff is still there. All that still works. There was a rumor for a while, I think, that login hooks were going to be going away, and they might be deprecated, but they're still there, so we're still using them.
Deprecated like cron, right?
I guess it's still there. It works. At still works, right? Shouldn't be a thing when you have.
The Mac Sysadmin talk on LaunchD was pretty. That was some pure uncut stuff right there. Did you see the Mac Sysadmin talk?
Yeah.
Were you there for that?
It was the guy who wrote the
man.
other sysinternals book. He was good. He was a good speaker.
It was such a fresh perspective of somebody who's like, I really like sysinternals on Windows. I really wish we had this for the Mac.
Yeah.
I'm going to lockstep follow the Windows sysinternals way of approaching the Mac.
Yeah.
And he brought all of the iOS flavor to it as well, which is, if you're trying to stay on top of where the actual OS is going, is probably a really good idea, because guess where most of the R&D is going to be? The platform that has 10 times, if not 100 times, the users on it.
Right. Yeah. Jonathan Levin, I think that was his name. He was a good speaker. At least for me, I don't think he said anything like groundbreaking, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. But
well, there was iOS stuff that just wasn't on my radar at all.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not jailbreaking, I'm not looking at the OS and actually running code to know that stuff is there and functional.
Right, and I agree with him. I think he mentioned that. So now that they've rewritten LaunchD and they moved what project owns it, I think we're not going to see an open source release of LaunchD again.
Yeah.
Which sucks because the source code to LaunchD was great. It was a great way to look through things and figure out what the system's doing and what's going on. And that looks like that's not coming back, unfortunately. So we'll see.
I wonder if some of their notes, the sort of patch notes that used to be there, even for release candidates or whatever, it seems like because of the, I think, valid complaints of the security community around security patches that Apple would issue, and they'd patch the vulnerability in iOS before they'd patch it on the Mac, or vice versa. There'd be a 3-week lag time in between, and so they're essentially detailing all the vulnerabilities. I wonder if them getting out of the practice of detailing all of those fixes has sort of snowballed a bit into.
So there's that, but I mean, Apple historically has a really bad track record at patching security issues from the time that they're made aware of them. So I disagree that is like some new valid complaint.
It's an old valid.
It's an old right. It's an old valid complaint.
Or more that they're going to bend to the will of.
Right, but I don't think that's why you go obscure source code. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what they're only making it harder for people in the community to develop software by not open sourcing any of their software. is what I was actually thinking really recently. Just the fact that, like, what other platforms care about your Objective-C frameworks? Like, yes, a lot of your stuff is in C++ from the old guys. A lot of the deep level stuff is like iTunes QuickTime before QuickTime X. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is deep, dark, and oh my gosh, we don't even want to let anybody see this because we hate looking at it ourselves. But then they actually took from open source projects and then made it a private framework.
Like
Remember
what?
that? What that was?
Well, WebKit.
Was it
one
Mod
of them.
Generator? What was the open source framework? I don't think it was Flying Meat.
No, Wrenches, Mo Generator?
Mod Generator, I think that was.
I don't know, but I know they credit that in Xcode.
Now.
Oh, now. Was there a period where they didn't?
I'm pretty sure there was a period where they had pulled in from open source, put it in a private framework, and then started rejecting apps that used it. When they were like, hey, this is the open source project. Oh, this is too much like our private framework.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, Apple gets around all sorts of things, like sandboxing.
But it's just like
Apple has backdoors into, like, oh, our apps can do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yours can't.
Yeah.
I'll see you. Safe trip.
But I just don't see back when it's Oracle and fake Steve Jobs saying the freetards are stupid, like, that was another administration, right?
Yeah. I mean,
what's worth holding on to that old administration for nowadays?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, again, Apple's like the Titanic, right? They turn really slowly.
Well, they iterate when they have a great direction to be in the first place.
Yeah, I think things are changing under Tim Cook. It seems like they're changing a little bit.
For the better or the worse, though?
Maybe both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, check out the money decision they made. If Steve Jobs was alive, you would not have a 6 Plus.
I don't know about that. Let's not. I don't ever want to get into if Steve Jobs. Well, we don't know, right? The thing with a dead person is that they can't change. No, but the thing with a dead person is they can't change their mind.
But their direction for so long
and
was
people who are alive
hand-holding.
Change their mind all the time, including Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs has gone back on tons of his things that he said at one point. Oh,
this has video on an iPod.
Right, awful. Oh yeah, we're doing it now. So
because it was awful until the technology caught up to the point where where the consumer demand was so overwhelming that they had, which in the case of the new-sized iPhones is really the driver.
Which was 85% of their sales that first weekend.
Yeah.
The screens were probably not quite where they needed to be yet. And back even a year ago when they released a phone, they wouldn't have been able to have the profile as thin as it is now. And if you had a huge honking wide device that was also thick, that there goes any kind of ability to hold it with one hand, even though most people apparently have issues with that now anyway.
This to me is the one issue that I would say. I know you hate thinking about what would dead Steve Jobs do, but I'm convinced that the protruding the protruding
Actually,
camera.
Steve Jobs would still have shipped that camera. Thank you very much.
I think zombie Steve Jobs would have haunted the heck out of the design team till they figured out some way of making it thinner.
I've heard that. There's actually a video of a guy that actually.
Oh yeah, and
he grinded up. What are you guys doing on the internet that you have all seen this and I have not? Twitter has failed me.
So what they didn't do after that video though was show him take a picture or take video.
Oh no, exactly.
Because he can't
survive that.
He can't. If he was smart, he should have been filming from the camera while he was.
Yeah, he basically goes to a grinder and they just
240 frames per second of me losing my lens cap. That would be awesome.
Yeah. It would look like the footage of the zombie apocalypse in all those movies, right? That just statics out and.
So yeah, I guess I agree. I mean, I don't have a 6 or 6 Plus, so I don't know. Does it bother you?
No.
Who cares, right?
I mean, every once in a while, aesthetically, if I'm looking at it a little, lying flat on a surface, it doesn't even rock enough to be of.
They did remove that bump in the profiles on the Apple.
Oh yes, yes, they got a bit of flack for that.
I mean, they do that. That's pretty common practice for them. They remove trees and people and stuff like that from their hero photos of their stores. I mean, why would they not their photos of their devices?
The iPhone 6 profile, no protrusion.
Is that still the case now?
Probably. But like it's
I challenge you to find any marketing material where the product advertised identically matches the product you get.
I don't know. I still feel like.
Yeah.
Well, no, like UK, you'll get sick over that.
They're always different.
Not only that, but just try to get the thing to look like a photo. Have you ever seen what's his name? Andrew's starts with a Z. Zuckerman? I think it's Zuckerman. Who is the photography for all this Apple product stuff that they've done over the past several years or so, almost a decade now. And somebody did a profile of the process that he uses just to take a product shot of something like an iPhone 6, and he's got something like 47 discrete light sources in this contraption to get like all the reflections just perfect. If you ever look at the guy, he's put out.
Of course, but that's standard photography for marketing, and yeah, there's no bump there.
Yeah.
There's no bump in the profile.
In the profile, no, but on the rear surface, you can see that it's raised.
Sure, but in the profile, where you would see it most dramatically is.
I don't know why they just, especially if you're going to shoot it like that, why not just show the bottom of the phone?
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're showing the bottom.
No, they're not. Because the button is there for the hold switch.
So Yosemite, that's my concern. Let's imagine my worst case scenario is Thursday. They say we have this new operating system, Yosemite. It's available for download right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You deploy it? You ready?
No.
That would be a problem for the main office. I found out the other day that when they upgraded them to Mavericks, they didn't stick around to say do not auto update, and so some users have selected the automatic updates.
Right, but it won't do an auto OS update.
It won't. Okay.
It won't do a major release update
because it actually went to 10.5, which it wasn't supposed to.
You mean
So
10.9.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll do those. It won't do, at least if Mavericks is any indication.
Because it'd be the free upgrade kind of selection.
Yeah, it
It's
won't
so
do.
different too that they'd probably get so much negative feedback.
Yeah.
It can break apps. It can literally break apps.
things.
Yeah.
So,
You know, so
I mean, even in my environment that is less than strictly managed, we turn off software updates by using terminal commands. When I set up a computer, I run a script on it, and one of the things that it does is turn off automatic software updates, and we manage those through our patch management system. We use Absolute Manage.
Yeah, I'm busy trying to find all the computers right now because I didn't set them up.
Yeah.
Someone else set them up for me. So going through and
So you have to figure everything out
you know, ARD is awesome. It works all the time, 100%, finding all the computers and letting you use the correct admin password.
Yeah. One of the tricks that I found with ARD, because I've had the type of issues you talked about where computers pop out of the list and pop back, or the host name will change to like a 2 in parentheses. I find that if you disconnect one of your interfaces, because a lot of the time you're connected on wireless and through an adapter, you turn off one of your interfaces, the jitteriness goes away to an extent. It's not perfect, but it's better. Because that was a really big issue for me for a while when Mavericks first came out. ARD was basically broken for, I'd say, about
a month or 2.
Months. No, it was longer than that.
Really? A lot of the problem.
The first couple of iterations of ARD. It was terribly broken, horribly broken. You could not use it. Had to basically use our deployment program to find computers on the network and then use another app to connect to it, either the
just VNC
or after I got fed up doing screen sharing, because screen sharing is like, I don't even know, it's like trying to eat steak with a spoon. It's like totally the wrong tool for the job if you need any kind of real access, like transfer files or run commands or any of that stuff. I switched to Jump Desktop, and I literally downloaded 3 or 4 apps to try and use computers remotely in an acceptable capacity. So I hear you. Turn off one of your interfaces, you should see some better results with that one.
And if that doesn't work, what cleared it up a lot for me was actually just some of the computers would like hop all through the list and show up at the wrong IP address.
Yeah.
What generally cleared that up was it was like duplicate entries saved within ARD of memorizing that computer. So I actually would go to my all saved computers list, highlight them all, throw them all out, and then you'd see like 11 of them would come back.
Yeah.
Even after you just deleted them all. You delete those, and then 3 would remain. And when you finally got rid of the last of them, then those duplicate entries that were causing the conflict and the jumpiness disappeared. At least that was my experience.
All of the ARD system files. When I actually started reading forums, and when people were like, "This worked for me," after 3 or 4 updates, I actually went through and I dumped all of the ARD everything, removed the app from my computer, made sure I pulled out all the receipts, all the preferences,
but wasn't it
everything.
storing all of that information in a Postgres or SQLite database somewhere on disk or something like that?
Isn't it a cache?
It does store it.
Yeah, it stores it. So even if you
somewhere.
remove receipt, you have to find that database.
Yeah, you have to go through and find all the little stuff that ARD puts into place when you launch it. And then when you nuke it, it'll come back and it'll be like, hey, I'm brand new. Like, want to set me up again? And then once I did that, after I had a stable release, because I tried it a couple of times throughout my troubleshooting process, once they had a stable release, I was good to go. I haven't had any more issues, no more hosts jumping around or disappearing from my scanner lists. One thing that still doesn't work 100% is I have 2 fixed lists, like one servers and one clients. I can add clients to the list, and sometimes they stay, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I just hit the refresh button, and they pop up. Like, I'll go to that list, and it'll be empty. I'll hit the recess, and it will remember those, but finally populate it.
Yeah.
I also read that using the kickstart command helps, because sometimes ARD will just turn off in the background.
Yeah.
Luckily, for inventory purposes, we're using also Meraki for at least and so that's at least getting on the computers. So I can send one-line commands like the kickstart, which will have a client on there at least.
One thing that I experienced with the kickstart command was that if you're connected through either ARD, I don't remember if it did it through SSH or not, but if you try and run it while you're connected through one of the methods you're trying to modify, it'll kick you off, and sometimes it'll freeze, which is less convenient.
Yeah, I'll tell you, actually, what cleared it up for me was stopping using ARD and never using it ever again. That's the best bet.
I cleaned it.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you use then in next place?
Anything else? No, like, what did you say you were using?
Jump desktop.
No.
Screen sharing.
Yeah, screen sharing, if you got to do that. I don't think I've had to do screen sharing in a very long time. But you use your management tools, Puppet or Monkey or Casper or, right? Like, I'm surprised you said you have management tools in place, but when you set up a new computer, you run a script to turn off. Just have your management software do that.
We're working on putting those pieces that currently operate independently together.
Oh, okay.
So like we've been working on a few rather large projects.
So you're ahead.
We're definitely getting there. We're looking into a more unified management experience for us.
Yeah.
Until recently, our IT focus has been primarily on the user side of things, but now that we've gotten user experience pretty much down, we're looking to make the process easier and more reliable for us.
Yeah. Good plan. Okay, but yeah, I would just say there are so many. You said you're using Monkey. You can use that to push out all sorts of things.
Yep, I'm just busy not learning there, but the ARD's set up, so it's easy to do that.
I just find like all the time invested in ARD, like ARD doesn't scale. That's the problem with ARD. So if you have this larger environment, like at some point it just falls over and you can't count on it. You can't count on it delivering packages or installing software on every machine. Can't count on it to reliably. I mean, it's great in small environments, but it's like all the work you're doing trying to get it to work at some point feels futile, right? Like just.
Yes, but it can apply profiles over the air. It can't do anything modern, so it's good to not expect it to be able to do much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised Apple hasn't. Oh, maybe I'm not surprised.
It's their stepchild.
Yeah, it just kind of drifted off. I'm surprised they haven't done anything even small with it. But
yeah,
does it run on Yosemite? Has anyone checked?
Actually.
It does. Okay.
Is it a new version like 8.8?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
On Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see a download for it
Yeah.
specifically, but I guess it just works.
It isn't a
close enough.
specific one, but when I look in my ARD list, all the computers that are running Yosemite, all of our test computers, show up as version 3.8, not 3.7.1.
Of the actual agent running on there.
Different, but I don't know if there's a separate, like, if
Oh,
there's
admin.
an ARD app
Yeah.
itself.
But no, that's what I meant.
Oh, the actual,
Yeah.
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 I actually haven't checked that, so
Yeah.
I want to say
From
for
what
sure.
From what I've experienced, I don't think so.
It probably wouldn't release one until Yosemite actually came out.
Right.
No, they have been
Still
betas
don't.
before.
They've been betas, but they won't
Yeah.
do an official release
Yeah.
until there's
Yeah.
an official release.
Still don't update right away.
So what other issues are people experiencing with Yosemite that?
Well, so I have two feelings on Yosemite, though. Like, we're not ready to deploy it
Right.
because there are still some significant issues for us
This is
to.
a matter of practice, though. I don't think most people probably wouldn't deploy it just because you shouldn't deploy an OS from the very beginning. I just don't think that's very good practice.
Well, it depends. Again, we've been able to roll out previous versions of the OS very, very quickly. Like,
But like, how quickly are we talking? Like
Days.
before the first combo update?
yeah, absolutely. Recently, Apple's been very good at that. And up through 10.9, yes, within days of the retail release, we're ready to say, go install it.
And there's no chance that that's how it pans out this time.
We haven't been able to pilot test.
Hmm.
So, no.
And I find that interesting too because all this talk about like some of the things that are wrong with it, and when you see the
It might not affect you, right?
Well, no, it might not affect us, but when you put that in, and compare it to like the iOS 8 update that came out for that, and you know the bugginess, it makes you question: are they trying to rush out these releases just to appease?
That's what I'm really. I would be really surprised if Thursday we hear it's available for download Thursday. Now that said, unlike some previous releases of the OS where there were like cool features, there's not much in Yosemite that we care about.
So from a business need standpoint.
From a business needs standpoint, it's, you know, almost everything in Yosemite is about iOS integration, which we flat out don't care about.
The same with my company. It's like we have no need for that. I mean, the only reason we moved to Mavericks was that it offered a better SMB client for us to work with our new SANs.
Sure. Sure, and it had better multi-monitor support, and
Yes,
there were some
much better.
Better, right? Like they're digging themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in, kind of. But
I mean, even multi-screen support in Yosemite leaves something to be desired for me. Like I've had issues where the menu bar disappears on one of my screens. But
that's the problem with multi-monitor support now. Like I can't ever tell where anything's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I got a second dock, and I was like, huh?
Well, now they have docks on every monitor. There's a dock if you go to the bottom. But my problem is I have 3 monitors, and my focused application is in the middle. My menu, I just use the menu item. Everything I'm doing it on the main screen. I go to the task switcher, command tab, and it shows up like on some other monitor. Like, why are you showing up over there?
Exactly. I'm in a focused app in this my main
I can
display. Why are you
never
showing
tell.
the switcher on my secondary?
Right. Or I launch something and it comes up on another monitor. Like,
Yeah.
I can't figure out what logic it's using to put things up on screen sometimes.
Yeah.
So that said, like, unlike previous OSs, we're not in any huge rush. I mean, the security stance might make a difference. If Yosemite releases and there's some big like security thing that's only patched in Yosemite, which has happened in the past, right? Like going from 10.8 to 10.9, there were some things in 10.9. It's like, oh, we released 10.9 today. Oh, and it fixes all this stuff that you've been waiting for. You know, like, then that might change our plans. But for now, I don't.
It's so visually jarring too. I have to.
I like the look of it. I'm fine with the look of it.
Yeah.
I like about 70% of the look of it, but some of the ways in which it's flattened just seems like I don't know, like almost a throwback to. There are elements in like the folder icons that seem very Windows 3.1 to me. There's elements in the transparency that, while better executed, seems very Arrow, very Vista.
Definitely.
And so I think some of those triggers being pulled up, you know, is making me not like certain aspects of the visuals. But yeah,
maybe I spend most of my time in a terminal, so I don't care, right? Like a text editor or a terminal. So I don't care, but like when I use the UI, it doesn't bother me that much.
I mean, aesthetics, for me at least, are far secondary.
Oh, of course.
I'm not paying attention to the, I mean, like, I think the new Finder icon's a little
Yeah.
Goofy, but I'm not staring at the Finder icon.
No, me either. And I don't really care what the menu bar looks like. I care that the core functionality is there, and the aesthetics to me.
And I will say,
in seconds.
Safari looks great.
Yes.
There's something about
It does
Safari
look really
that looks great. It's a good browser again.
Yep.
Like if you remember the transition through 5, where everything was its own process. Like there was a lot of experimenting with Safari 5, and it just became terrible. It's a great browser again.
Yeah.
So that's been good. That's been good to see.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite regular user feature of the new OS has been Safari.
Safari's great again.
I do like the new Spotlight. New Spotlight's been pretty good.
New Spotlight is good. It's not going to replace Alfred for me.
No.
New Spotlight is the new location of the home button on the iPhone 6 to me. I keep on expecting something blue to be in the top right corner because I do use it as a launcher, so I don't have to worry
I
about
like
what
it a
machine I
lot.
am.
And for most people, it'll do everything they need it to do.
Yeah.
And
Like,
it's so
not Alfred.
fast
like,
compared
why
to
are
the
you in the
old
middle?
one. Responsiveness is.
Yeah.
It seems like there's zero lag.
Maybe
like-
they took Quicksilver open source and put the Spotlight
Yeah.
face on it. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, while I was going to let you finish this conversation, but since we're on the OS coming out and testing, what's everyone's testing environments like? Do you have some old Mac Mini stuff in the server room, or do you have the exact models now? What's everyone's setup like, and how do you test?
Production machine testing.
Mhm.
So like Yosemite beta, and current I'm not on 8.1, but I mean I could if I wanted to. I just don't really feel.
But that's your only test environment, is that one computer?
For me, yes, and I test.
I meant for
gross
your company.
functionality. Well, no, I mean we have other people who have similar jobs that I do in our other locations around the world, and they also test. Whether they test as brazenly as I do with the production machine is a different story. But I usually wait until later on in the development cycle before I go doing something that crazy. So I waited this time until GM Candidate 2 before I installed Yosemite on my production machine, because if something broke horrifically, I needed to be able to roll back or change my mind. And on a beta, it's a little bit less.
Yeah, I have two computers that I use regularly as my own machines, and we have a machine that serves near where we do a lot of our just some sort of remote work that we do. So the first machine to get it was that one, with I don't know beta 1 or something like that, or GM2 or DP2 or whatever. And then one of my own production machines hit it on the early betas, and then once everything that I know I absolutely need to rely on isn't broken, I'll put it on the other one too. But then you have to start testing some of the things that your designers, your developers, whatever environment is going to go into. Parallels is one that always seems to break with every OS release. So you have to use it as a test machine, not just as your regular workhorse machine, if you're going to do it that way, at least in my experience.
I'm not sure if Fusion is still dog slow, virtualizing Yo-Yo, but that's the first thing we would roll into. I'm really interested actually in Vagrant has hosted boxes, and being able to spin stuff up for the things that I want to look at as a service are very few, but the fact that I can get them up in the command line in no time flat rather than clicking through an interface is what is attractive about Vagrant. Do you have
I find
Yo-Yo on there?
virtualizing OS 10 always has these little
Fits and starts.
edge cases, like whether it's running smoothly or not. Like there was that whole thing with server a while ago that if you only had one CPU, it wouldn't report the.
It wouldn't allow you to do
correctly.
OD.
Right. It wouldn't allow you to do Open Directory, which is probably what you're testing with server, right?
Well, you're doing Profile Manager, which relies on OD.
Right.
So
but it just turns out there are all these little weirdo edge cases that I just give me a machine.
So do you guys
install.
virtualize your servers then?
No.
Okay.
we do, because we have caching servers and a lot of WAN IPs. So it's a requirement for the implementation that it wants to dedicate the NAT that your clients are going to be cached for, you have to sit behind the same NAT. That there's ways to, if you're in an education environment, that you have all the WAN IPs, things can be different. But that's one thing that we're virtualizing in ESXi. We're going to get sucked into our vCenter cluster. And then we just have, we have resources. So I have laptops for testing different versions of Yo-Yo and our deployment, our way of getting deployment out the door. But then there's
Are you calling Yosemite Yo-Yo, or am I missing something?
Yo-Yo! Because it's 1010. Yo-Yo.
Okay.
Wow.
Yosemite Raps. It's like, yo!
Did you Twitter
That's
that?
my-
So that was.
Did I Twitter that?
Yeah, you should.
You'll let me Twitter that.
Twitter that joint.
That's actually from IRC. I think Brian hooked me up with that.
I mean, as far as virtualization goes, we virtualize an OD replica, but that's it.
Because I know, like, because we have VM Sphere, and though I was asked to virtualize my servers because they're, well, one's a Mac Mini and one's now an iMac because my other Mac Mini died, and the iMac's newer, so there's an iMac in the server room in the corner. But it's the fastest machine they're going to allow me to have, because again, it's a Windows-based thing. We don't do management through OD at all.
Which is
fine.
Sure.
To be honest.
Like, that's not an issue.
I mean, I was the one who started implementing with Deploy Studio and Monkey because they could care less because they're not worried about that yet.
But what are they running vSphere on?
It's gotta be
Very big Dells.
All right, so
I forget the model number.
right,
but, I
so legally you're not allowed to
yeah,
virtualize OS 10 on this machine. So
and they say that it's not supported.
Yeah.
But there's nice instructions, but I wasn't sure because it would run probably a lot faster for me if it was.
Yeah, probably would. But we have conversations with Apple around that all the time. Like, we would love to be able to virtualize OS 10 on non-OS 10 hardware. But I mean non-Mac hardware. So yeah, maybe that would be nice.
I think you had a shot at that maybe when people were still paying for operating systems.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
that
you
give
do
the
pay for
operating
server,
system away-
just a lot less now.
Well, yeah, but now they give the operating system away effectively. I don't think they're going to budge on that.
I don't think so either, but like we would love it for, even if it was, you know, EULA restricted cases, you know, but I don't know. That would be nice for just, you know, testing. I'm spinning up this test machine, or I need to spin up 50 test instances. You can do that across generic Intel hardware. Much nicer than, much easier than you can OS 10. But
it'd be nice if Apple kind of got their server wheels in motion. I mean, to look at what's happening on the like Windows server side.
they're not interested in this space, and why would they be?
Yeah.
They're not going to come in and own it and dominate it.
Well, they don't need to own it and dominate it in the same way that, you know, Microsoft does or whatever, but they still, I think, if they're going to be gung-ho about being in education environments, being in, you know, other environments that require at least a few thousand users, they ought to have the tools in place to manage that effectively beyond just Profile Manager, which is great.
They're not interested. They're just not interested. You can do that with a Windows machine or a Linux machine.
Yeah.
Be done with it. You don't need OS 10 server. And they have OS 10 server, which, you know, for small environments does a bunch of things nicely enough.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I guess I'm hearing people are mostly not ready to deploy Yosemite quickly. Yeah. Right.
We don't have showstoppers, but
yeah.
I'll have a few people who do it anyway because they can't take their admin rights away, and they'll just click on the little button.
And will that damage them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, not in any really monumental way because they're not the ones doing the production work.
Yeah. So, like, effectively for us, we have that profile like ready to go that stops App Store updates because right now, even an upgrade from a working machine like breaks things once it comes back up on the other side for us. So, like, we'll have our finger over that button to deploy that profile to everybody if, and while we're watching the keynote, you know, or like watching the presentation, like, It's available today. Okay, boom, go, stop.
You gotta put a mole in that room, huh? And an informant on the inside. So you have 0 latency.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be like, and is available, like...
Why don't they fly you guys out?
Somehow I
We'd
think
go there if we wanted to, I guess, but...
I guess the Wi-Fi in
But the
those
internet's
environments has gotten a lot better, but still I think their video stream escapes to here, and then your response time back to your own, to the internet as a whole would be faster
The
than
last stream,
being there in the room.
horrible. I
Right.
You don't
talking to
speak
friends,
Chinese?
even at Apple,
Right.
in the store, my friends are trying to watch it, and they're
This
like,
isn't going to be the same.
No.
nothing.
Whoever was
Case.
responsible for that is currently out in a dirt farm somewhere.
So when Yosemite is ready to deploy, let's say it's 10.10.1,
Yeah.
10.10.2 I think is the safer
to
bet.
whatever, let's say now it's ready to deploy. How are you deploying it? How are you getting it out to?
So that's one of the things that I'm going to be working on. I was working on this at my last job, and we had a working prototype for it, but we ended up using the tool by Greg Neagle.
Yep.
Create OS 10 installer
Mhm.
package.
And it works great, because you can just kind of add scripts or put in pieces that will run when you first boot up, and that's what we hope to use, in our environment. Right now, we have machines that are in Mavericks, but we don't allow people to install Mavericks on their own. They would have to get reimaged. And so we're trying to get away from that process. We don't want to reimage anymore. We just want people to, hey, do the self-service and upgrade yourself at their own time too. So that's the goal. How long it's going to take to get there?
That's a good goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have your support organization like wiping and reinstalling machines for people.
And I mean, there's a lot of things that have to happen too before you get there, right? Like in our current environment, people have admin rights. That's
Everybody?
Yeah. That's a bit of a problem. It's well, just because if you're trying to have some sort of management and control, you have people that are, you don't really know what to expect because anyone can really do whatever they want on their machines. And so, I'm not sure if we're going to try to maybe re-image everyone to Mavericks first, and then from that point on we can safely say, all right, going forward, any release from Apple, major releases, we'll do in place OS upgrades.
Like all said and done, Apple has worked really hard on the upgrade experience.
Yeah.
So like there were, back in the day, there were times where upgrades wouldn't go so well. But
And
Apple,
you would want to erase and install.
and you would want to
Right.
cleanly install. But nowadays,
I think after like Lion,
updates are pretty darn good. Apple's really
They're
worked
pretty good.
clearly very hard on that process.
I would even take it one step further back and say Snow Leopard was a really good release in terms of being able to upgrade it, not having any residual issues or...
Snow Leopard was almost a non-release of a release, though. It was...
Yeah, but Leopard was such a steaming pile
Catastrophe.
that they kind of had to put a whole bunch of fixes in place, and it was too big of a job for, a point 0.1 release. It was like,
Why do you say Snow Leopard was a non-release?
Well, I mean, it was no new features were added from Leopard to Snow Leopard. It was almost no new features by Apple standards.
We got Grand Central Dispatch in 10.6. There were tons of API
But that's
changes.
stuff
API
that wasn't
changes
ready,
some.
and they came out.
what was it in?
You can't say that there were no changes. There were a ton of changes that enabled new applications to be built.
it was mostly
Yes, but those applications weren't already
Under the hood,
installed.
There were a ton of changes. Just because the UI didn't change and get flashy.
Yeah, but you're talking about enabling something like Grand Central would enable a new class of applications to be released. Those applications weren't already installed on 10.5 machines in order to run the 10.5 to 10.6 upgrade process.
Through the beta period, there were people developing those that were ready to release them very close.
Day one, yeah.
Right? Very close to the retail release. So, and they were, hey, this is 10.6 only. Okay.
If you compare it, I think, to like 10.6 to 10.7 change, which I think was the last one that was at times a bit rocky. 10.7 to 10.8, 10.8 to 10.9.
Beautiful,
great. But to compare 10.4 to 10.5, let's say, versus 10.5 to 10.6, it was a much smaller release. You were, if anything, I mean, the OS was actually shrinking because they were pulling out all that old PPC support and whatever. But it seemed like that was, it wasn't like they implemented iCloud for the first time or any of these other major migrations that freaked out.
People who upgraded to iOS or iOS 8 and
blowing out iCloud data
is out of whack.
Yeah.
Entire organization of 160 users.
I haven't heard of this issue. What's the?
If you are signed into an iCloud account on both your computer and your iPhone, you update your iPhone to iOS 8, you're still on Mavericks or earlier on your computer.
It is.
If you say, it's like, hey, do you want to update the iCloud drive? And you say yes, you've effectively removed your computer from the equation in terms of iCloud services.
They can no longer sync over iCloud.
Until you're on Yosemite.
So that brings up another question then. How many people here in the corporate environment allow their users to actually use iCloud on their Macs?
Yeah. So it's hard to control it.
We encourage people to back up their mobile devices to iCloud.
Yep.
Don't.
Well, mobile devices is one thing, but I mean like your computers, not your.
Well, we don't allow people per se, but that's what we would consider right now kind of a shadow IT problem. Like, it exists, people can connect to it, and,
the things it has access to are pretty limited, thankfully.
People in our organization really use it because a lot of our data services mimic the kind of stuff that would be available through iCloud. So, we have a mail server with calendars and contacts and mail. There's really no reason most of our employees do not work with, photos. So the cloud photo storage thing is not an issue. Syncing bookmarks between devices isn't something that most of them are interested in doing. For us, it hasn't been an issue.
Ours is more verbal. You're bringing your personal information on a company computer. Your phone is one thing, but now, because we don't use mail, we use Outlook and Word, and we use the Office suite. So all that company stuff is pushed through there. So really, most people are afraid to say, you're now going to move all your personal information on a computer we have access to. And they're like, well, I don't want that. Right. Even though we don't go combing through their computer, but more people want to keep their personal life away from that. The only personal stuff they use is Spotify and Twitter.
Mm-hmm. You can thank the NSA leaks for that, I think, in part. People seem more wary of giving up their personal data nowadays.
I think we're all on the same page with Yosemite, it sounds like. Not quite ready to release it, but we'll try to do self-service. We'll definitely be self-service when it's ready, which, again, once you pass a certain number of computers.
Well, I'm hoping to get Monkey 2 next up and running, so that would be my self-service as soon as I can get it.
So you need Monkey 2 for Yosemite. So you should roll that out first. Monkey 1 will not run on Yosemite.
They've actually gone release on Monkey 2 now, I guess.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Official as of Sweden, even though we've been testing it since.
I'm waiting for
3
your
months ago,
new
probably.
Monkey Tricks video to come out, by the way.
March.
When are you going to do your Monkey Tricks for
Level 2? Up with Monkey is so 2011.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm thinking level up with Auto Package because Auto Package is my new bicycle.
Yeah.
To say a meme from 8 years ago? Yeah, Auto Package is definitely my new bicycle because there's so much going on with it. But yeah, I need to update. Luckily, they moved to GitHub because now it's going to be so much easier from because there's no client GUI Git tool for Google Code, but on the wiki, I'm securing Monkey's transport over the WAN instead of Simian, which is another way that you could do that, which also is based on the certs that Puppet uses. I'm running Puppet Enterprise, and we specifically selected it because it will secure the transport over the WAN. there was a great presentation that you did not get to see because he said, "Hey, could you lose that video, please?" From Sam Keeley at Dropbox about, and he totally like made the scripts fail in his "How You Own a Computer with Monkey." But let's just say that if you're doing HTTP and you're on a LAN with a wired machine that never would get compromised any other way, then maybe everything's fine. But securing the transport is very important to us.
Yes.
We didn't do any talk about shell shock, though, did we?
No.
You want to have the meeting like end at some point.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's going to be it for at least for the hangout. So thanks everyone for joining, and see you next time.
Thanks.